theyeshiva.net.
Bruchim Aboyim B'Shem Hashem. Welcome. I want to welcome everybody who's here. Mikarov u'mirachik. I see some people came from far away. So I want to welcome all of you. Thank you for gracing us with your presence on this special night. It's known in all the Svarim that the yartzeit of a tzaddik is a very powerful and potent time. An Eis Rotzen, a Yom Segula, a time when the entire life of the tzaddik and the light that the tzaddik brought into the world radiates and has the ability, as the expression in Tanya is to be poyel, Yeshua is bekerev haaretz, to bring forth tremendous blessings individually for every person and collectively for all of us together. Tonight is the Yom HaYelula, the yartzeit, the 70th yartzeit of the Rebbe Radiates, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, who was the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe and passed away Yud Shevat, Shabbos morning, Yud Shevat, Tovshin Yud, the 10th of Shvat, 1950. So this Yud Shevat, tonight, Tovshin Pei, 5780 is Shivim Shana, 70 years. Reyani Kiben Shivim Shana, but this is not Kiben Shivim Shana, it's Shivim Shana. And it's also 70 years of the leadership of his son-in-law and his successor, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the son-in-law of the Baal HaYelula, of the Baal HaYartzeit, of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. This is true with every yartzeit, and every life, every milestone dedicated to a special Jew, especially when you're dealing with tzaddikim. Their entire life was one long story of Mesiras Nefesh, for Hashem and for Torah and for the Jewish people. One long story of absolute dedication and self-sacrifice to the Rebbeinu Shalom and his Torah and his children. So such a yartzeit and such a Yom Segula is really unique and auspicious. And that's why we're here together to commemorate, but more than commemorate, the Arizal says, Vayomim, it says by the Megillah, Vayomim ha'elin is Scarier, V'nasim. So the Arizal teaches when you remember, the most important thing is V'nasim, it should have an impact. That we on this day should learn from the Torah, from the teachings, from the example, from the life of these two great tzaddikim who are connected to Yud Shevat, the Rebbe Radiates and the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Schusam Yagan Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, to be able to enrich our lives and to enrich our world. I'm also honored to be here with my older brother, Rabbi Simon Jacobson, who's gracing us with his presence. Usually only my face hangs out in this area, so I'm very happy and thrilled that my brother is joining me here this evening. And Be'ezer Hashem will be a very uplifting and inspiring and meaningful Farbrengen and evening for all of us. So, the Alter Rebbe says, the Baal HaTanya writes, that whenever a neshama wants to move somewhere, how does it move from one place to another place? When the body wants to move from one place to another place, either you use your feet or you get into a car, or in the olden days a coach or a donkey or a camel, or an airplane or a boat. What about a neshama? When a soul wants to move from one place to another place, what are the wings of the soul? How does a neshama relocate? The Baal HaTanya says through a nigun. A melody are the wings, melodies are the wings of the soul. He used to explain the Mishnah in Shabbos, Kol Balei Hashir, Yoitzim B'Shir, V'nem Shachim B'Shir. Shir, over there it's talking about an animal that goes out with a collar on Shabbos, but Shir also means a song, because it's called Balei Hashir. All the masters of song, Neshamas HaMalachim, Yoitzim B'Shir, V'nem Shachim B'Shir, whenever they want to go out from one place and go to a new place, it's always through a nigun. So let's start with a nigun. This is a nigun, what was known as a beloved nigun of the Baal HaYartzeit, of the Rebbe Radiates. It's called the Beinani. Why is it called the Beinoni? For those who learn Tanya and know what a Beinoni is, the Beinoni is the possible person, the person who deals sometimes with a lot of struggles, but he or she always knows how to connect to their infinite light despite their struggles. That's the niggin called the Beinoni. So we'll sing together the niggin of the Beinoni. Those who know it sing along. Those who don't know it, you learn it. It's a very powerful, deep niggin that captures the journey of a Jew through life. You'll give me the beat for the Beinoni. Yenam, Ayayayaya, oh, Yenam, Ayayayaya, Yenam.
Yes, I am the brother of YY, yes. It's a yichus. It takes many years to earn that yichus. So thank you, my dear brother. And it's an honor to be here in this auspicious evening. Since we're beginning with Negina, the Alter Rebbe also said something else about a song. He said that when you're asked a question, you don't have an answer, you tell a story. And if that doesn't work, you sing a song. And the Alter Rebbe, with Negina, was able to capture many hearts and souls because a Nigun is kulmas halev. It's the quill of the heart and of the soul. So since we sang a Nigun from the Rebbe Radiates, whose 70th yartzeit is this evening, Yud Shevat, let's now sing a Nigun from the Rebbe. In 1956, Tovshin Yud Zayin, Simchas Torah. I heard it from people, I wasn't there, I was actually born that year. So if you want to take a second to calculate my age, please do. Not going to make it easy. So that Simchas Torah, as it was the custom during those 9 years, from approximately 55 through 63, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, after a long night of dancing hakofis, the second night, Lil Simchas Torah, and that followed along Farbrengen, so hakofis would end, the dancing would end maybe 2, 3 a.m. So okay, late enough, right? No, around 5, 6 a.m., before dawn broke, the Rebbe would come down to the shul, and he'd get up on a bench or on a table with a bottle of mashke, and said, whoever takes upon themselves to learn chassidus, extra chassidus this year will give l'chaim, and then he would teach a nigun. This went on for a number of years, a nigun, and he often told a story. Actually, I have to correct myself. It was Tovshin Yutes. I was 2 years old. Tovshin Yutes was 1958. This particular nigun that I'm going to describe. Then the story he told is a very powerful story that, especially at a Farbrengen like this, we really can personalize, because it's the story of our own lives. The story is called, and the nigun is called Shamil. Shamil was a band leader, but not of a music band, of a wild group of bohemians that dwelled in the mountains, in the Caucasian mountains, and they were free spirits. And they were a nuisance to all their neighbors because they would Farbrengen all night, not necessarily the Jewish style. They would Farbrengen all night. They were rabble rousers, as they say. So the community down below in the valley couldn't fight with them because they had the high ground. They were in the mountain. So they came up with a ruse, and they convinced Shamil, who's their leader, to come. Let's talk. Let's negotiate. Whenever you hear negotiate, you always have to be careful. Well, he wasn't. He went down to negotiate with them. And as soon as he came down and no longer was that powerful and vulnerable, they arrested him. They put him in a labor camp. Shamil, in this labor camp, he was heard humming this song. A chassid who was there as well heard him humming the song. And as chassidim do well, they know how to smuggle out a song from one side of from the Umazeh, from the other side to the Kedusha Dika side. And the song has 3 sections. Shamil was singing from his heart and soul because he was in a labor camp. And the Rebbe said the 3 sections of the song go like this. The first section is nostalgic. Shamil is remembering the days when he was free in the mountain. Section 2 is the melancholy and the sadness and the depression now that he's in a labor camp. Not free to do whatever he wishes. And section 3 of the song is the hope and the betochen, the hope and trust that he'll one day be free again and be able to soar and fly. So the Rebbe said, this is the story of Yeridas HaNeshama Beguf. The soul, Neshama Shenasate B'Taherehi, every soul is a free bird. It's a free spirit. But it comes down into this world, Mi'igra Rama Lebira Mikta, from a lofty heaven to a deep pit, a dark pit, a labor camp. And the soul suddenly has to deal with health issues, parnas issues, livelihood, all the aggravation and anxiety that life brings, that everybody can fill in the blanks. So the neshama sings because the neshama knows three things. Number one, I come from a greater place. So it's the nostalgia, remembering the source where the neshama comes from. Number two, the sadness of being aware and not denying that this is a labor camp, a gullus, spiritual displacement, a dissonance that we all experience one way or another. But then the conclusion is the hope and betochen and trust and the optimism, absolute trust that we will fly again. And this time, not just in heaven. Neshama b'guf, the soul in the body that's done its work in this world, will soar together with the body. And then the Rebbe went on to teach the nigun. It was a complicated nigun. It took many times for him to sing it till people caught on. And the nigun is obviously much more powerful than any words. So let's sing Shamil, and as my brother said, those that know the song sing along. Or we'll all learn it, and even those that know it, every time you sing a nigun, should always be with a new passion, a new chayis, a new insight, a new way of touching our hearts and souls. Shamil, and you'll probably be able to figure out which part is which. If not, we'll point it out.
So you want to start this beat?
Yeah.
Start and hold control.
Oy na ra na na. That's Beinani. Oh, that was the Beinani.
Previous one.
Okay, previous one, yeah. Did yo no ya no ya ya na ya na ya ya na ya yo did yo ya na ya ya na ya na did yo ya na ya na 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 ya na 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 ya ya na ya na nostalgia, the nostalgia. Ya, 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 na, ya, ya, na, ya, na, ya, na, ro, ya, 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 na, ya, no, ya, ya, ya. That's the melancholy, the down. The betochen. So Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, my dear brother, mentioned before. What is that? Mentioned before the reason we're here to honor yartzeit and honor Ascholas Hanesias leadership and the language that's used in these instances. Uba Hashemesh v'zorach Hashemesh, that the Eibishter provides that sun sets, the sun also rises. So in every generation, there's a Nossi, all the way back from Moshe Rabbeinu. I want to just share a few personal words. They say the difference between a Farbrengen, a speech, and a party is in a party, everybody's talking and nobody's listening. In a speech, one person is talking and nobody's listening. And in a Farbrengen, nobody's talking, but everybody's listening. Either some people sitting at the mic, but the kavanah, the intention is not that they talk, it's that they try to express the shamadika feelings, the soul feelings that we all have, that resonates. So something deeper going on. So on a personal note, one of the greatest things that Torah teaches us, and also on a human level, today especially, gratitude is a big word, that it's healthy psychologically, emotionally. Kodesh Hatev, mitzvah of Bikurim, so many mitzvahs connected to gratitude. So I think it fits very well for myself to articulate a voice of gratitude and a debt of gratitude to the Rebbe, to Lubavitcher Rebbe, because I would not be the person I am today were it not for him. As I mentioned, I was born in Crown Heights, USA, back in the 50s. I was somewhat of I'm not going to go through a whole confession here, but I was somewhat of a skeptic with many questions as a teenager. And growing up in a non-dogmatic home, those of you that want to psychoanalyze the brothers and the family, so on one hand, we grew up in a very intense movement, very intense religious and chassidish home. But at the same time, there was no dogma, which means it wasn't forced upon us. We were able to breathe. So as I was going through my searching years, those formative years, those teenage years that we all know is a big minefield, and a lot of things happen then that will shape the rest of your life. So, long story short, it was the Rebbe and his teachings that touched my soul. And as a skeptic, it wasn't easy, but it resonated, a truth that literally ignited something inside of me that still lives inside of me with the same strength just when I was 16 years old. They call it a rebel without a cause. You have a rebellious, very powerful energy, but you don't have a cause. I only understand that now in retrospect. And I found my cause. I found a truly selfless man. Everyone has agendas, even holy people as well. A truly selfless person that people call great. You know what greatness is? Not that the person is great, that he makes you feel great. Not just feel. Empowers you to sense that you can achieve anything you set your mind to. Greatness, excellence, not mediocrity, excellence. So on a personal note, 70th year from when the Rebbe assumed leadership in 1950, Tofshin Yud, now 70 years later, I would be amiss not to open up my words with that deep, deep gratitude. And if the Rebbe was here, which I'm sure in some way or another he is, in spirit, he would probably say, not comparing, that it's his father-in-law that ignited him and so on, back and back. So I'm not putting myself in those shoes, but that is the approach. And I want to thank the Rebbe, and I want to thank his commitment, what I personally witnessed, foregoing his own interests and his own study and prayer, where he could have been a very private person. It was Meiser Nefesh, when you hear his words, that he delivered the first inaugural Maimer discourse, Basel Ligani, Tovshin Yud Aleph. It's recorded today. We have recordings of it. Crying with tears and saying it's not something we wanted, but this is what the Eibishter put us here. We have to do that we were charged with doing. It's not about our comfort zone. It's not about what we like. So that thank you goes personally from me to the Rebbe, and I wanted to say that at the opening of this Farbrengen. But something much more important. Koved Harav, Kfeid Rabbe, is one of the biggest mitzvahs. So many halachas connected to it. But it's not just personal. Because if it's personal, I can sit at home and say l'chaim to the Rebbe and thank him. We decided to join together in Farbrengen here. You know why? Because it wasn't a personal message for me. The Rebbe's revolution, and revolution I mean within the Mizgeres of Torah, in case anybody misunderstands, affects us all, whether you know it or not. And we're dedicating this evening to express, not just thank you, but actually express and present in some way that each of us can appreciate what this Rebbe did for our generation and for each of us even till this very day. My brother and I were both zeichet to be chezrim of the Rebbe. A chezer is someone that on Shabbos and Yontiv, where there's no recordings and no notes were taken, had to remember verbatim. Now this wasn't 10-minute drushes. This was sometimes 7-8 hours. So we had to then document it after Shabbos and Yontif, sometimes 100 to 120 pages, without redundancy. I'm not saying it to toot anyone's horn, but what that does to you, it transforms you. Until this day, every time I look in the Rebbe's Torah, I find new things. You think someone like myself, I've been involved in so many years, yeah, because that's what a Mayan HaMizgaber is. So this evening is dedicated to presenting some of these teachings. We'll each be doing it in our own style and way and message. And the goal is not Dvarim B'Teilim. Dvarim B'Teilim doesn't mean talking nonsense. Dvarim B'Teilim means talking about things that don't have any Ma'aser B'Peil, that don't have a B'chein, a conclusion that each of us in our own personal way can take home and live with it. Skills, it's called life skills and methodology of how to live a better life, a better Jewish life, a better home life, a better work life, professionally, individually, in every aspect of the human being. So that's my short little introduction. Was it short enough? Okay. So I'm going to begin sharing a few thoughts on this. Hopefully through the evening, I'm going to try to cover 6 main themes. We'll do it in segments. And so I want to begin with one tremendous chiddush that, as I said, Kol ma shetalmid vosik osel lechadesh nitn lemoshe misinai, which means a real chiddush doesn't mean it's original. It means it was given b'Sinai, but then it was still concealed. It was a klal. We didn't understand necessarily the details. So the real Machatche Torah are not people who come and say something that was never said. It was there. And when you read it in the Pasuk, you're suddenly, that's what it means. So the first one, I'll begin with a short little anecdote. There's Chachmei Chelem, right? In every community there's Chelem, Chachamim. In Israel, in Eretz Yisrael, there's especially a lot of Chachmei Chelem. So they're always trying to figure out how to solve problems, right? And so one day, a bunch of so-called leaders get together and they say, what do we finally do? We have a real problem with our neighbors, the Arab world. So one guy comes up with a brilliant idea. Brilliant. You'll soon see how brilliant. He says, you know what? Instead of fighting with the Arabs, let's attack the United States of America. And what'll happen? Of course, they'll beat us. And then out of guilt, they'll rebuild us as they did Germany and Japan after World War II. So instead of $30 billion of aid a year, we'll get hundreds of billions of dollars. Brilliant idea, right? There's ein alter Id, one old Jew sitting in the back. He's listening to this chachamim. He says, very nice idea. But what happens if we win? What happens if we win? What are we going to do with the United States of America with 300 million people? We Jews have mastered the art of defense. We know how to survive. Nobody knows how to survive like us. Thousands of years of oppression, of one golus after the other, taught us resilience. The more we were oppressed in Mitzrayim, the more we blossomed. And that's what happened throughout the generations. So nobody plays defense better than us. But here's the question. How about offense? There's an enemy, we know what we stand for. We will fight that enemy, and we'll survive them, and we'll endure. The greatest enemies are all gone, and we're here. But now, let's say you have freedom. There's no Nazis, and there's no Bolsheviks, and pogroms, and crusaders, and inquisitions. So now, what do we stand for? 2,000 years of playing defense, you sometimes can forget, so what are we headed for? You know how many young people I hear from who say, I'm sick and tired of hearing that Jews stand for anti-Semitism. What do we stand for? What's our vision for tomorrow? So here rose the Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe, 1950, 5 years after the Holocaust, after the Shoah, 5 years after the Churban, that was Hoyelesiyah, the worst of ever, and not just the Churban of all those that we lost, the complete uprooting of communities, families, everybody was affected till this day. And what did he say? We're not going to lick our wounds. We're not going to feel sorry for ourselves. We're not just going to say, oi, was kementon. He said, no, we will use this new situation, the newfound freedoms in the United States and other parts of the world, and we're going to define the vision that Yiddishkeit always had from the beginning of time. A vision forward. Not just what are we anti, what do we need to protect ourselves from? From this enemy, from that enemy, from different material temptations. No, that we are going to have a vision that will bring and revive Yiddishkeit by the Jews that need that. Will revive Chayes and Keches by the Jews that are brokenhearted after what we went through. And we're not going to be victims or survivors. We're going to be builders. We're going to be proactive, not reactive. We're not going to be defined by how we suffer. We suffered, but we don't become sufferers. If you think about it, this is a visionary. Because he didn't have anyone to look at. No one had that attitude. Everybody was saying, you know what, after the Churban, what you know what we should be doing? Rebuilding our little communities. That was it. No. He said, no, I'm not ready to rebuild. He sent everyone out of Crown Heights. Go on shlichus somewhere. Go build a outpost wherever Jews need you. And 1950, everyone thought, people respected the Rebbe, but they didn't appreciate it. What does it mean for us? You can translate into your personal life. Are you a defensive Jew or an offensive Jew? Are you in the offense or are you in the defense? And the best defense is offense. That's one. Yesh lahayrich, but will be short. Number two, the plague of mitzvahs anoshim milumoda. Mitzvahs anoshim milumoda means mechanical Judaism. That you do it robotically. I'm not going to ask by show of hands here how many of you are mechanical Jews. Can move on. Mechanical Judaism means it's the routine. You grew up with it. It's your culture. That's your comfort zone. That's what you do. We know they're very harsh words, the Tanakh, the Nevi'im tell us in the name of the Eibishter what he thinks about mechanical mitzvahs, karbonis and tefillahs that are just lip service. So what's the solution? So I'll share a story with you. I was in Santa Cruz, California a number of years ago, speaking there. In a bookstore. There's a lot of Jews in that town. I don't know if any of you have been there. It's situated between the Pacific and the mountains. It's a very calm town, antithetical to New York in every way. There, nobody seems to have a job and no one seems to be rushing anywhere. They're very comfortable. They call themselves being in bliss, whatever that means. From natural means, not natural means. I spoke in a bookstore called Gateways, not the Jewish Gateways, a bookstore, a New Age bookstore. So a big crowd of people, you could see right away, a lot of Jewish souls there. How could you tell? There's ways to tell. The nose is often the way, or the nose job. You know? But one way or the other is the nose. I finished my talk. A woman raises her hand. She raises her hand and she says, I have a question. I grew up in Borough Park, Brooklyn. I went to Beis Yaakov. I was a 14, 15-year-old girl with a lot of questions. I was always told questions are puzzle. I could see she spoke fluent Yiddish. You're not allowed to ask questions. She said, my parents were angry people. My father was an angry Holocaust survivor. My mother was even angrier. And Judaism for me was all about fear, anger, punishment, guilt. You list all the neuroses. And they told me, stop asking questions, be a good Yiddish meidele like your mother and grandmother, and stop disrupting. These were the words she used, I'll never forget them. She said, my soul was asphyxiated. I was suffocating, couldn't breathe. So I picked myself one day, I was around 16 and a half, and I left home, never to go back. My parents probably sat shiva for me. I went to California. It looked like around the late 60s, the way she described it. I found my soul, not in Yiddishkeit. That was the word she used, Yiddishkeit. I found it. I don't want to even say it in a holy tent. May I? What kind of words do you use in this place? Do you say? I don't know what he says. Worse? Okay. We'll say she found it in Zen Buddhism, and the thing that's called, let's put it this way, it's not the acronym for let's start davening. Okay? Die verstehen. And then I moved up north to San Francisco and finally ended up here in Santa Cruz. I found my peace. Tova Aleichem Bracha that you don't know what it is. Thank God. Good. And I found my peace. I want to ask you something. You look like the rabbis that were in Beis Yaakov. I haven't seen a rabbi like you in 25 years. How do you feel so comfortable about speaking about God and soul and neshama? I never heard this in my school. I never heard it in my home. So I told her. I said, well, we Jews have a thing called the 613-step program. Okay? So she laughed and a few other people laughed. After the crowd dispersed, she and a few people remained who all were very intrigued. And we had one of these marathon talks till the wee hours in the morning. We talk about everything, purpose of life, the Holocaust, God, how do wicked people prosper and good people suffer, all the big questions. And I shared with her, I said, I want to share something with you from my Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And it's a moshel, I didn't hear from him, I heard it elsewhere, but it captures the theme. I said, when God created the world, he created the nightingale, a bird that has a beautiful voice. The bird came to Hashem and said, thank you for a beautiful voice, but you have to give me something to protect myself from predators. I may be one evening at dusk, serenading into the night, singing away. Everyone loves my melody, but one small problem. Someone, a predator looking for a good meal, will be attracted to this piece of meat, singing. Give me something to protect myself. So the Eibishter offered the bird a beak. There's a very sharp, razor-sharp nose. The bird inspected the merchandise. No, it's not for me. A beautiful bird like me with a nose like that. No. Then God offered the bird claws, sharp claws, another form of defense. No. Finally, Hashem, God said, okay, I'll give you knafayim, wings. The bird never saw wings before, looks at the wings and said, I don't understand. You're the master of the universe. You created the world with such design. Why you give me 2 extra pieces of dead weight, which make it more difficult for me to escape? So, of course, God said, no, little bird. These are called wings. When you learn to use them, you can fly and soar to places that you never could reach on your own. So I told this woman, I'm not judging you. I don't know what I would do if my soul was suffocating and asphyxiated. But I will tell you, they only taught you half of Judaism. They taught you the mechanics. They didn't teach you the wings. Mitzvahs, practically speaking, on face value, mitzvahs, there's a lot of burden. It's a lot of weight. Especially if you know the details. From morning to night, how you sleep, how you wake up, how you die, how you're born, how you love, how you marry. Everything in life is regulated, even what order to cut your nails. They didn't know that. I pointed it out to them. What order to tie your shoelaces. And forget about Hilchos Pesach, the ultimate OCD holiday for those that are OCD. And that's the technical. A lot of weight. Why? Some mitzvahs we understand. But there's another part of a mitzvah. Mitzvah comes not just from the word commandment, it comes from the word safsa v'chibur, connection. Nobody likes to be commanded, but everybody wants to be connected, whether through mobile phones or spiritually or psychologically. And that to have, they didn't teach you. You know what's sadder than a bird that has no wings, which is very sad, is a bird that has wings and doesn't know that it can fly. Let me tell you what happened. This woman and the people there, over like 6 of us, all started to cry. And I started to cry as well. We had a sobbing session, a healthy crying session. I'm sure you've had that once. Huh? And she said to me with tears, no one ever told this to me. I said, exactly. That's the antidote to mitzvahs anoshim u'lamoda. It's not the mechanics. If you look at musical notes, it looks like gibberish. You can't read it if you don't know it. Then suddenly you see somebody take musical notes, they start playing an instrument, and it's magic. You have to know how to read it. And I can say to you that the Rebbe, that's what he was dedicated to. He gave us a blueprint, how to read the notes, how to look at the mechanical body weight and see the wings, see the music. Halacha is not just laws. Al tikra halichas al halachas. It's from the word halicha too, movement, journey. It's a journey. And finally, point number 3. Or should I stop here? Huh? Yeah. Point number 3 in this segment, and that is our children. Everyone here who's a parent or grandparent knows that today it's always been a challenge, tzagidul banim, children. Bring up our children. But today it's far more challenging because everything is open. There's no longer a ghetto. You can have all the walls in the world, but there's no walls that protect from this. I know filters and this. The ones who need filters, frankly, are not 3-year-olds. It's adults that need filters. So you're going to give the adults to filter themselves. It doesn't really work so well. So what do we do? Playing defense? You could try. I'm sure some things can be done at young age. What do we do in this world with so many challenges? And we can't turn the clock back. We can't shut down technology. We can't shut down all the temptations. We live in an open world. And you can imagine a leader like the Rebbe thought about it far and long because he saw it coming. 1950 was just the beginning. It only accelerated the modern world in which we live. So what do we do with our children? A woman called me probably a year ago, crying. I didn't know who she is. She said to me, I want to remain anonymous, if you don't mind. I said, sure. My heart is broken. I have a 17-year-old boy. Friday night, he refuses to come to the Shabbos table. He stays in his room. I don't know what he's doing. I'm sure it's not necessarily kosher stuff. And I don't know what to do. First, I yell at him. That doesn't work. I try with goodness, try to talk nicely. That doesn't work. Try to coerce him, incentivize him. He's not interested. Maybe you can give me some aids. So she heard some classes of mine. She thought maybe I could advise. So I said, let me ask you, what does your Shabbos table look like? She says, the regular, like everybody's. So I said, yeah, spell it out. She says, every night we light Shabbos candles. My husband goes with shul. comes home, make kiddush. I said, every week the same thing? Yeah, exactly. We keep up exactly the same thing. I said, and what? Give me. He says, your husband falls asleep at the table. Yeah, of course, same time always. What about the nigunim? Same songs. The food, not exactly the same food, but the same recipe, more or less. Sometimes we change. I say, you have any guests? Very rarely, because we're all tired, blah, blah, Friday night. So I said, let me ask you, why would a 17-year-old young boy who has a lot of energy in him be interested in sitting at such a boring table? She says, what do you mean? The Eibishter gave us Shabbos. I said, so why don't you explain that to him? She says, he's not listening. What did the Rebbe teach us? There's no such thing as complacency and say, we're just going to do it because the Torah says so. Back to the Mitzvot Anoshim Ulamot. No. You have to make a passionate Shabbos. No two Shabbosim should ever look the same. I'm not talking about halachic. She said to me, what does that mean? I said, I'll tell you what it means. If our husband works, he works in Manhattan, in a computer place. I said, why don't you just invite some guests? Not every week. Invite an atheist to the table and argue about God. I guarantee you, your son will probably be interested. Create excitement. So this goes back to the offense and the passionate Yiddishkeit. You're going to get a 17-year-old. Some are Kabbalah Selniks, fine. You get someone who just follows along, at least on the surface level. We don't know what's going on inside. But if you're not exciting a young person, what do you think? There aren't alternatives today? I said, today he's in his room. Soon he'll have the courage, he won't even be at home. I'm not predicting it, Chaz v'Shalom, but that's what's going to happen. You have to excite him with Yiddishkeit. You have to be creative. We're all creative at business. Everyone's figuring out ways to make money on Amazon or wherever it is. Why don't you be creative at home and figure out this is your primary responsibility? Is this a guaranteed? Of course we need mazel, we need bracha from the Eibishter for our children and grandchildren. But take the bull by the horns and do something. And that's why Chassidus and Pnimius HaTorah came to this world. It wasn't optional. The Baal Shem Tov didn't come here because, he's interested in giving us another thing on the menu. It was because in our day and age, the Moshel HaYedua from the Baal Shem, from the Alter Rebbe, Ben Chela, that the child is comatose and sick. And maybe a little water, a little liquid mixed with the precious stone of the king, which is Pnimius HaTorah, that was always concealed and only learned biyachid, only individually, will save the child. What does it mean in simple English? It means neshama dike'esius, not just the mechanics. So our children, this is ten li'an nefesh, we're talking about children at stake here. And the younger you begin, the better. Why should we not be talking to our children every morning when they say Moida Ani? Or at night, Biyot Chaf Kidruchi, what it really means instead of the words. What means nishmosi? What does nishmosi mean? You say children don't understand, it's too esoteric. Figure out ways. Children are actually more soulful than we may imagine. And what means biyot chav kidruchi? Talk about it. And if you have to dig deeper, dig deeper. If you have to ask some people questions, ask questions. Guaranteed, a preemptive measures like that, like preventive medicine, go a long way that when the child is 15, 16, they've already heard enough about neshama that they can find relevance. And Korevei Lecha in Yiddishkeit. Can move on. There's a lot more to be ma'arich on all of this, but the goal here is to just state some key points and can move into and it's our obligation to learn more and then implement it in our personal lives. So with that I conclude a few points. We're going to speak some more. We'll sing now a nigun. Nigun is always like first of all, l'chaim to everyone, l'chaim, l'chaim. I'll just say a bracha that all of us should have great nachas, Yiddish nachas, Chassidish nachas from our children and our grandchildren, from our family, from ourselves, and use these teiros and Yom Zgula like today to actually help us in all the inyanim, b'chol hamitztarech, not just the minimum, but the maximum. Miyodei hamlei apsucha g'deisha, like ha'gdusha v'harchove. L'chaim, l'chaim.
L'chaim, l'chaim. Chaim, everybody. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. L'chaim v'levracha, l'chaim tovim v'lashalom. I would like to share with you two ideas that were extremely central, are extremely central in Torah and Yiddishkeit, especially the way it was emphasized and articulated by the Baal Shem Tov and his students, and particularly in the teachings of the Rebbe, whose life and contribution and leadership is celebrated tonight and tomorrow. These teachings took on unique emphasis, both in quantity, developing it, and also in quality, really showing the depth of it and the relevance of it, and how central it is to Yiddishkeit. Hillel says in Pirkei Avos, Im ein ani li mili, ch'shani la'atzmi ma'ani. If I am not for me, who will be here for me? But if I'm only for me, then what am I? He basically is pointing out two opposite ideas. If I am not for me, mili, who will be here for me? Here he's accentuating the milas hayachid, the individual. But then he continues, Chani la'atzmi, if I'm only for me, for myself, ma'ani, what am I? Here he accentuates the quality and the virtue of the rabbim, the tzibur, the collective. And both are essential to life. I am I, and you are you, but we are also we. To say Baruch Hu or Kedusha, as I once heard from the Rebbe of Farbrengen, he said 9 Moshe Rabbeinus in the room can't say Kedusha. 9 Moshe Rabbeinus. Comes in a balagola, a coachman, I'm in it. 9 Moshe Rabbeinus. There's something about the tzibur, the rabbim, Beroivam Hadras Melech. Both of these points are central to life. I'm also part of a family. I have a mother, I have a father, I have a family, I have siblings, I can even prove it. Yeah. You're part of a family, you get married, you build your own family, part of a community, ultimately part of Klal Yisrael. In both of these points, the Rebbe, throughout his years and his teachings and his life, brought out two very powerful and revolutionary points in this. And as my brother Reb Simon said, revolutionary doesn't mean revolutionary new in the sense that it was a break from the past. Revolutionary means highlighting and emphasizing and revealing points and ideas that sometimes are overlooked or not emphasized enough. So first, I'll talk about the yochid, the individual, the imein ani li mili, and then the rabbim, the yochid. In one of his discourses for Yud Shevat, the Rebbe would hold a Farbrengen every Yud Shevat because it was the yartzeit of his shver, of the previous Rebbe, and he would always make a siyum on a masechta to be machmer for the shittas that on a yartzeit. The minig by Chassidim is that a yartzeit they do tikkun and they do a Farbrengen and they say l'chayim. But by Achenu Bnei Yisrael, there's other minhagim, and in Shulchan Aruch you have different shittas, that it's a day of a fast, and it's a different type of day. So the Alter Rebbe, they used to call the Litvak. Yeah, because Chabad was really the Litvish Chassidus. So the Alter Rebbe, the Baal Time, they called the Litvak. So the Rebbe was very makbid always to be machmer for every tzad and halacha and Shulchan Aruch and Poskim, beyond what people imagine. So every yartzeit, even of his own Rebbe, he would make a siyum masechta. So l'chol adayis, it should be able to be a simcha. Certainly the yartzeit of his father and his mother, he made a Farbrengen always with a siyum. One of the things that Rebbe would do at the Farbrengen of Yud Shevat was he would say a maimer chassidus, a discourse in Chabad chassidus, with the pasuk Basi Lagani Achaisikala from Shir Hashirim, because that was the last maimer of his shver that he published for the day that he actually passed away. So in one of the maimarim, Basi Lagani Tovshin Chav, 1960, the Rebbe shared a hafladik on an extraordinary idea from the Baal Shem Tov. This insight from the Baal Shem Tov is written in by his student, the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, Reb Yaakov Yosef of Polno, who was a student of the Baal Shem Tov. He says it in Parshas Eikev, in his Sefer Toldos Yaakov Yosef, what he heard from his teacher from the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov never wrote down his teachings. So what we have from the Baal Shem Tov is through his students who wrote down his teachings. One of the greatest sources is the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, Reb Yaakov Yosef, the Rav of Polno, because he was a Talmud directly by the Baal Shem Tov, so nothing was a Klei Sheni, Klei Shlishi. He heard it directly from his teacher. This is the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. He quotes a Gemara in Masechta Gittin. The Gemara says in Masechta Gittin, in the 5th Perek, the very famous Gemara, that Bar Kamtza was thrown out of a party. Everybody knows the story. He was thrown out of a party. But there's the second half of the story. He went to Rome, and he told the emperor that the Jews rebelled against you. Mardu b'cha Yehudai. And I'll prove it. Send a sacrifice, and they won't offer it on the altar. And the emperor sent a beautiful calf, Igla Tilsa, and this Jew blemished it. The dukin shaba'ayin, a blemish in the eye, which for them was not considered a blemish, but for us is a blemish. And when he brought it to the Beis HaMikdash, the Chachamim wanted to allow it to be offered because they said that Shalom Malchus, peace with the Rome, trumps everything else. There was a Tana Scarier Benefical, and he said you're not allowed to offer a blemished animal. He wouldn't allow it. So they said the only other option is to kill this man. Because if we leave him, if we let him live, who knows how many Jews can die? He's going to go back to Rome, quintessential Moser. We have to eliminate him. Because what he's going to do is he will cause endless bloodshed. Scarier ben Avkilis again argued, and he said, then people are going to say that the punishment for blemishing an animal, for blemishing a carbon, is death. That's not true. We don't just give death penalties in Judaism for blemishing an animal. So he refused to kill this Jew, and he refused to offer the sacrifice. So Rabbi Yochanan concluded the story, and he said, Anvasnusoi shall Scarier ben Avkilis hechriva es beisenu, sarfa es echalenu, vehigla es banenu. The humility or the piety, the humility and vasnusay of Scarier, Reb Scarier, who was one of the great Tanoim, is responsible, of course, indirectly, for the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, the decimation, the burning of the chamber, of the sanctuary, and the exile of the Jewish people. The Mefarshim struggle with the word anvasnusay, his humility. Mela, his tzidkis, his sensitivity, his intense caution, his need to follow exactly the letter of the law. What's anvasnusa, his humility? So there's different explanations, a famous explanation from the Vilna Gaon, other explanations. But I want to point out what the Toldos Yaakov Yosef brings from the Baal Shem Tov that the Rebbe repeated and explained. The Baal Shem Tov says he uses the word anvasnusai very accurately, because sometimes what is responsible for the Churban Beis HaMikdash is anova, humility. Why? So the Baal Shem Tov says one of the greatest causes for the destruction of holiness and of the Beis HaMikdash in a human being's individual life, and therefore in the world as well, is something that we call anvasnusai, humility. Now, humility is usually considered a beautiful virtue. Ha'ish ma'isha anav ma'id, says the Baal Shem Tov. But Chazal are hinting at us that sometimes humility can be the cause of destructiveness. What type of humility? 4 words. Miani umani. The feeling inside, who am I and what am I? I am basically a loser in English. I am basically a shmata in Yiddish. I am basically a doormat. I am insignificant, valueless. Are you going to make me believe that my life and my words and my thoughts and my actions can change the world? What are you, insane? I know who I am. I look in the mirror and I know the truth about myself. I'm a nobody. I'm messed up. I got a lot of issues. If you don't believe me, you can ask your therapist. I have a lot of toxicity. I may even have a lot of trauma. I have so many challenges and problems. I know who I am. This sounds like humility. Anova. I'm a nobody. But not garnished, they say in Yiddish. I'm a nobody. Says the Baal Shem Tov, anvasnusoi could create a Churban Beis HaMikdash, a destruction of Kedusha, because the moment a person really believes that, then the next step is despair, depression, frivolousness. I become careless about my life, what I do, what I don't do. I need to find all types of distractions in order to numb this pain of how empty and lowly I feel. Or I just think it doesn't matter, nothing matters, and if nothing matters, everything goes. Says the Baal Shem Tov, if somebody would know the truth, in his words, that your words, your deeds, create a shefa in all the olamas, they create a flow in all of the worlds. If somebody would know the truth, that even the malachim, the angels, are seeking to be nurtured from your avodas Hashem, from your daily life. He adds even more. The pasuk says in Tehillim Samachesim, Tishkevun bein shfatayim. Hashem rests between your lips. Says the Baal Shem Tov that Hashem himself kisses your lips when they utter words of love, words of Torah, words of tefillah, words of positivity, words that bring in light into the world. He says Hashem stands and shoykid v'shomer esvasav. He watches your lips. And when a word comes out, a word of Torah, a word of tefillah, a word of goodness comes out, he kisses it. He kisses your lips. Mwah! Baal Shem Tov's words. The Toldos Yaakov Yosef heard this from him. He rests between the lips, waiting. You open your lips. Wow, look at these words. What do they say? You sneeze and it creates a tornado in Thailand, right? A sneeze in Monsey, in a tent, creates an impact in Thailand. Baal Shem Tov, not only in Thailand, creates an impact in all the worlds. Until Kivayachal Hashem himself said, if somebody would be aware of this, then they would look at their lives and they would look at their potential and they would look at their days and nights with tremendous awe. And they would serve Hashem with tremendous joy and with tremendous passion, with tremendous enthusiasm above anything else. So the Rebbe added, if this anova creates the Churban Beis HaMikdash, what creates the Binyan Beis HaMikdash? How do you build a Beis HaMikdash? When you get rid of this type of displaced humility, anova shaloi b'mkaima. When you realize who you are, when you realize that you're an ambassador of infinity, that you're an ambassador of the Rebbeinu Shalom, shluchai shel adam k'moisai. When you realize that your real ani, the real I, not only is it not insignificant, but it actually represents Hashem in this world, and that you represent the link between heaven and earth, and every move, every word, every thought, every action moves the world, changes the world, impacts people, impacts your environment, impacts the spiritual worlds, impacts all the angels, and Kavayachal impacts Hashem himself. I once heard a story from a rabbi. His name is Rabbi David Lapin. Rabbi David Lapin. He was for many years South African. Used to be a South African. He was born there, raised there. For many years, he served as a rabbi of a big shul in South Africa, in Johannesburg. And he felt that he wanted to be intellectually independent. And sometimes when you're a rabbi in a shul, you have to somehow, present company excluded, this shul is different. But sometimes you have to conform a little bit. There's the board of directors. So he decided he has to be financially independent from the shul. So he opened up his own business. He opened up a business on the sun. It was very, very successful. Consulting business, he did very well. And he had the shul and he had the business and he started to give a lot of lectures and a lot of shiurim. And he was having an impact, but he felt that his life was too confusing and overwhelming and he took too much on himself. And he decided he has to seek the advice of somebody who was completely objective and didn't really know about him and his work, and somebody who had a broad mind. So he said in 1976, he traveled to America from South Africa, and he went to visit the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he shared with him his life story and what he's involved in and so forth. And the Rebbe encouraged him to continue everything. And he said, generally, when a very successful business person teaches Torah, it has a certain respect that a regular rabbi won't have, because you can touch people who know that you understand them. You know their world. You're not just a spiritual man who lives in the world of rabbinics. So in many ways, it has a tremendous koyach, it has a tremendous potential. And he was encouraging him to increase his work. And he turned to the Rebbe and he said, listen, I'm very flattered that you think so highly of me, but you have to understand I'm young, there's a lot of pressure on me, and all this promise that you see in me is not very realistic. I'm just a guy. I do my thing. It's not such a great impact. I mean, I try to do good things, but you're encouraging me to add more and more. It's not so. It's not so significant. I'm just a young regular person. So he said, Rabbi Lapin shared, I'm going to quote, I remember clearly his response to my outburst. He said, I'll tell you what your difficulty is. You think that human interaction is like a chemical reaction. It isn't. In a chemical reaction, there are two elements. They interact with each other, and they result in a third compound. And you think that's how it works with human beings. Human interaction is like a chemical reaction. One chemical mixes with another chemical, and it has a reaction. You create a third compound from the mix. That's what you are imagining. But people aren't chemicals. And therefore, human interaction is not like chemical interaction. When people interact, the result is nuclear reaction. A nuclear reaction occurs at the core, and it radiates in a spherical rather than a linear way. And as the outer ring of the sphere of the nuclear reaction gets bigger and bigger, the number of people you're touching grows bigger and bigger, and there's absolutely no limit. So when you touch the heart of one person, there is a nuclear reaction because that person in turn touches many other people. So each person you touch, even if it's a moment's interaction, represents a nuclear reaction in terms of impact. That's what it really is. He says he was shocked to hear these words. Later he finds out that research is really touching on this. Cutting-edge research is touching on this. He quotes the Farbrengen Heart study that showed that people's moods affect others 3 times removed. So my mood affects, right, a friends. So we impact people not only with words, but with moods and energy. So he said, from then I understood if I'm teaching 50 people, I should realize that these 50 can in turn be impacting 150 others who impact hundreds of more. So that means week after week, I'm affecting thousands of people without realizing it. Like a nuclear reaction, not like a chemical reaction. He said, it changed my mindset, and I still think about these words. Don't underestimate what each person is capable of doing. Remember, you touch one person, you're causing a nuclear reaction. If it comes from the core, it radiates like a nuclear reaction, and the outer rings grows and grows and grows. Nuclear reaction, of course, in the positive sense. This idea of imei nanili mili, if I am not for myself, who am I, was one of the yesodis, the most fundamental teachings of the Rebbe. That the greatest tragedy is when you don't recognize who you are essentially, what your power is, what your potential is, what your resources are. When you don't recognize that you may think you're a simple person, and in many ways each of us is a simple person. Not because your ego must be big. Ego stands for easing God out. But on the contrary, when you realize what you were chosen for and what Hashem put you in the world for, then never ever underestimate the fact that if something is coming from your core and it radiates outwards, it's not a chemical reaction. It's a nuclear reaction. When we can see it this way, when we can really look at ourselves this way, then you and I can literally change the world. L'chaim, 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 l'chaim. Yeah.
L'chaim. Three more fundamental points. So I spoke about earlier. Spoke about offense of Judaism, the offensive versus defense. How to deal with mitzvah sanoshim ulamod, the mechanical, robotic Judaism, and some points regarding our children. So we're going to take it a little step further. They say in the non-Jewish world, they have a joke about Jews. They say there are 4 Jews in history. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, as they call him. By him, everything was about the law, Torah, the way they understand it. The second one, which I also don't want to mention, but they call him a Jew. We call him Yoshke Pendrik. They call him whatever they call him. And by him, everything he taught was love. So, law, love. Then there was a third Jew. His name was Sigmund Freud. And he taught that everything is about the unspoken taiva. Taiva hayedua. Bilaz. And finally, the fourth Jew they talk about is Albert Einstein. And he taught that everything is relative. You want to take a moment to absorb? It's not ge'inus. So yes, let's talk about Sigmund Freud a minute. He definitely had an interesting mother, because it defined a lot of his thinking, a Jewish mother. And he developed a whole psychology that even though there are many anti-Freudians today and people who don't subscribe to his way of thinking, but still he's the guy to disagree with. He became the father of psychology, Kavyach, the secular world. Some say he was a very good marketer, which is also another Jewish quality. But regardless, he called it in German, which we translate the id, ID. What's the id? That the driving force of a human being and soul is pleasure, the pleasure principle, and particularly of that taiva that I described before, that I mentioned before. That's the driving force. Now, but then, there's also an ego and a superego that keeps some control. So we shouldn't go self-destruct. We'll all destroy each other if everyone's driven by pleasure because we're all competing. So there's certain superimposed forces that keep a human being at bay So we should coexist, we should negotiate, we should be able to red lights and green lights. But it's superimposed. The natural you is a selfish animal. And it fits very well into the secular version of what some call the Darwinian Freudian model. What's driving a person is ego, selfishness, survival of the fittest. I know, why am I mentioning this on Yud Shevat night? Because the Rebbe actually referred to it, without by name, in a powerful sikha and talk that he gave Yud Shevat in the Rebbe's 70th year. This is 70 years from Yud Shevat, Tovshin Yud, Tovshin Lamed Beis. Yud Aleph Nissen, the Rebbe's birthday, he spoke about it. I'm sorry, Yud Shevat, Tovshin Lamed Beis. And he talked, my brother mentioned earlier, Bosi Legani. A simple posuk in Shir HaShirim. I have come into my garden. Says the Medrash, Legan ein ksivkan elo legani. It doesn't say to the garden, to a garden, to my garden. Legnuni, to my bridal chamber. This is the place where I marry you. The it's marriage. This is where we got married. This is our personal cheder, yichud. L'mokim shayikah shchina, where the ikah shchina was in the beginning of creation. Where was it? In Gan Eden, with Adam and Chava until Chet Eitzadas. The Chet, I mentioned before, mitzvahs from the word connection. What's Aveda from the word? Disconnection. Aveda from the word Havorim Reshus L'Reshus. Dislocation. When your being is misaligned from your purpose, the Eibishter asks you, Ayeko, I don't recognize you. Here you were, living up to your purpose, and now you've wandered off. You betrayed yourself. You betrayed your destiny. You betrayed me. So what? But here's the key thing. Even with all the chatoim that caused this talkus hashchina, as the Medrash continues, Shir HaShirim Rabbah on the pasuk, Kapitel Hey, pasuk Aleph. Now I sound a little like my brother, right? Ozlekata holach b'nimusa. So, where's that Medrash? Bereishis Rab, by Avram, and Shmei Saba ben Yisrei, yeah, by Moshe. Anyway, so the key thing is that you would think the Medrash is coming to tell us a negative story, how the Shekhinah leaves, because it can't rest in a place that we've banished the Shekhinah. But the Rebbe's emphasis, Legani, the Eibishter calls it, it's always my garden. It's just a question of whether it's a concealed garden or it's a revealed garden. And in stark contrast to Freudian thinking, which, by the way, is not just Freud, the prevalent thinking in modern Western world for sure, even the rest of the world, is exactly that. Human beings are beasts. We evolved. We evolved from apes, and before that, amphibians, and before that, bacteria, to a ball of gas. But then we created rules, superimposed rules. In complete contrast, human being is created b'tzelem Elokim. The essence of who we are is not the id, but the yid. Freud got it half right. He dug deeper, but he didn't dig deep enough. He found the id. You dig a little deeper, you find the pintele yud that you add before the id becomes the yid. The spark of the divine. Look in the psukim and chumash. The first time a human being is described as what is described? B'tzelem Elokim, b'salmenu kidmusenu. You don't even hear mention of another side. We don't even know about a Yetzer Hara in Parsha Bereshis. Even after the Chet. You know when we hear about it? Parsha Neach, Yetzer Leva Adam Ramenu Urav. You need a whole Parsha. Why? Because the Torah is teaching us the etzem of who a person is always Tzelem Elokim. The question is, concealed or revealed? So if you have millions of divine images in the world, what is that? That's called a garden. But then the garden gets concealed. And that's not just a different perspective. It's a completely different perspective on the human personality. We are fundamentally flowers in a garden. Now, but then it got concealed. Think of dust gathers. Dust gathers and it's concealed. It's a whole different take on a human being. I would submit, even though it's a sharp thing to say, I'm not going to say names, I think through the years of Golus, even Jews, even Torah Eden, somewhat these toxic ideas slipped into our lives as well, where we also sometimes think that people are be'etzem ra. Now, but then, some people work hard on themselves, they become a little better people. So it has real consequences. For example, talk about intimacy. I want to use the word sexuality. Many think of it as a necessary evil. That's not a Jewish concept. The Ramban wrote a holy Gedus to tell us not a dover meguna. That's the Kedush HaKadoshim. Never then, anything greatest holiness could also fall to the darkest places. Be'etzem, we are a garden. Legani. It's a whole different perspective on a human being. And that leads me to the next point. It has real implications. And what is it? The difference between a fear-driven life and a love-driven life. Fear-driven education and love-driven education. What does that mean? Think about your yeshiva years. Maybe you're still there. What was the primary way that they got your attention or disciplined you? And I include myself too. I went through the systems too. It was a lot of fear, punishment. God will punish you, your principal will punish you, your parents will punish you. I remember my principal saying, my father let him believe that. My father never touched me once my whole life. But my principal thought my father's some Russian poyer, so that probably beats me up every time he hears I'm bad at school. So I remember my principal saying to me, all I have to do is call your father, and I know everything will be fine. Little did he know. I smiled. I didn't tell him I'm smiling. Because he called my father. Not my father ignored it, but his approach was not gvura. It was chesed. Gvura is the easy way. Your child misbehaves, he comes home, or she comes home. The easy way, they did something really bad. It's very easy to just punish them and demoralize them and break their spirits and so on. The other extreme some parents do, I ignore it. It's never my child's fault or my fault. It's always the fault of somebody else. Comes Teres Achsidus. And the Rebbe turned it into a methodology that's used in every Chabad house and every Chabad approach. Everyone talks about everybody's welcome. That's not just some because they're nice guys. It's a Yesedisdika philosophy based on V'haftarecha kamecha, that it's not just a theory. I think I was once here in Monsey and I asked the crowd, I was invited to for Shabbos. It was an event. So tell me, what's the biggest mitzvah in the Torah? What are you most mahadr? What are you a kanoyin? Everybody answered. Not one person answered v'haftarecha kamecha, which Rabbi Akiva calls klal gadol b'Torah. Just a klal gadol b'Torah. And Hillel just simply calls it kol ha'Torah kula, and everything else is idach perusha. It's just an interpretation. How many kanoim do you know? Even was calling them kanoim uchredim and kanoim ledvar Hashem and so on, that will say, I'm a kanoy in Avis Yisrael. I guess it's not up there. Levushim, yeah. All other things, a lot of anti this, anti that. I'm not saying to be critical. I want to bring out a point. Because it's a product of Golus, fear-driven. I know you'll say, no, doesn't it say, Cheshech Shiftei Seinebnei? So first of all, there's a lot of commentaries, Mefarshim that speak that it's more in concept, and especially today, if your teacher is not a Yiddish Shamayim and not a parent, maybe he's doing it out of Achzorius, and he's just dressing it up in Levushim, Ki'ilu, it says in the Pasuk, his discipline. Not so poshut. Like it always says, from chsadim, too much chsadim, yeah, you can become spoiled. From too much gvura, you can destroy somebody. It's very different. Better to err on the side of more love than more on the other side. So a fear-driven education is one that, you know why you should remain Jewish? Because your feet will fall off, or other parts of you, God will strike you with lightning if you misbehave. And if you read the Psukim in Chumash, especially the Teichachot, it sounds pretty much like that. And we take it literally. Now let me ask you a question. The Eibishter created us. He knew he created us with a Yetzer Hara, and he knew we're flawed human beings, and we're not perfect. So what is he, some sadist? He creates us with mistake, to be able to make mistakes. He knows we'll fall, and then he says, I got you now. I will punish you. What kind of God is that? We're not equals. It's not a principal in the school who happens to have a lot of unresolved anger. He's taking it out on his students. What's going on here? The yesod of kol ha'chaim, kol existence is teva atev lehetiv. The Eibishter created the world because he is teva, he's be'etzem tev and chesed. And even when he gives us challenges, it's also chesed for us to be smart and not, and an aveda. And schar and einish, as the Shalah says, is siba mesubov. If you put your hand in fire, the fire is not punishing you. God said there's a system. If you eat good food, you'll be a healthy person. You'll eat toxic food, you won't be. I put in a system. A mitzvah naved is not some zgula. A mitzvah makes you a healthier person, begashmis, beruchnis, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. And naveda disconnects you. It's a dissonance. When you take that attitude, it's a whole different approach to chinuch, to parenting. Now, this doesn't mean there's no room for discipline, but gvura sheba chesed. When you see a teacher or a parent that loves you, and even when they, God forbid, because you did something, they have to discipline you, and you see they're crying in a corner, and they make it clear to you that they love you, and this is because they love you, it's very different. Too many angry people expressing their anger. So this, again, it's not necessarily a chidush that I never heard of, but turn it into a methodology for our day and age, as that's what the Rebbe did. And we all try to live up to it. We all have our challenges as parents, as educators. And finally, point number 3, or point number 6, I should say, is something that goes back to what I began with, defense and offense. You ask an average Jew, and I ask all of you to think about this for a second. Is Judaism parochial or global? Now, I know you're going to say, what's parochial? I'll translate parochial. Parochial means it's for a segment of people in a particular community. Global means it's for everybody. Now, everybody's going to answer. We're constantly hearing, we're not global. The Abish just sent us into a globe, and we have to deal with it. But it's parochial. We have to build our communities, build our homes and families, and the rest of the world is an enemy, if anything. But then I have a question. Avram Avinu, Echad Haya Avram, first of our Ovis, was he parochial or global? Did he teach for a particular community? What shul was he involved in? Remember, there was no Orthodox, Conservative, Reform then. And no other, all the other names and labels. He taught that God exists. And instead of a pagan world, we are all servants and we're all here to serve a greater cause. Last is Doka and Mishpat. And al pi halacha even, there was no such thing as a Jew even. It's all svarim on this. That till Matan Teda, they needed gators. But regardless, even if you call Avram the first Jew, however that's explained. But what did he teach? And what did Moshe Rabbeinu teach? So how did these global visionaries, pioneers, who basically the first earliest Eden, and the people we admire and we consider to be our ancestors, how did that become parochial? How did it become even conformist? These were all revolutionaries. They were all pioneers. Echad HaYavrama Ivri, because he stood up against the entire world. So some explain, because once Judaism and Teda becomes establishment, all establishments have a certain element of bureaucracy. And bureaucracy, we know what happens when bureaucracy takes over. The Rebbe, in 1950, Tafshin Yud, reintroduced, now I should add, he didn't reintroduce, his father-in-law did it, the Rebbe Rashab, all the way back to Baal Shem Tov, and B'chlal, all the Eden who were real Teda Eden from beginning of time knew it, but he turned it into a global approach. That Eden are not here to play defense, and we're not here just to take care of our own tzaddik in pelts, is the expression, a tzaddik in a fur coat. You light a fireplace, and everybody gets warm, including you. Now, this doesn't mean, chas v'sholem, we let our guard down, and everything in the street belongs to them. Chas v'sholem, there's hamavdil, ben kedush l'cheil, Yisrael ha'amim. Because every structure needs boundaries and barriers, but not to close the door, but in order for you to bolster and reinforce your inner strength. A child 5 years old needs a home and nurturing. You don't send the child out somewhere on a journey. It needs its nest. But the day comes when lech lecha, ma'artzecha, melatechem, beis avicha, in the Rebbe's words, how he teaches it, that this is a tzivui to every Yid. What's artzecha, melatechem, beis avicha? Get out of your comfort zone. Everyone has their eretz, their melatechem, beis avicha. Everyone has their subjectivity. First of all, natural avos atzmei, bias. Number 2, parental influences. And number 3, social pressure. And everybody has to get out of it. In Perek Tezvav and Tanya, one of the most powerful prakim, he says, Avedis Hashem. If you do it 100 times, you learn Mishnah Meshena Pirkei Me'ah Pamim, the Gemara says in Menachos. It's not called Avodai. Why? Because it was the custom. That was the minhag. Everybody learned 100 times. Today it's a chiddush, but then everyone did. 101, you got out of your comfort zone. That's lechol chamar, tzachom beis avicha. You could say parental influences. What do you mean? My parents are Yiras Shamayim. They taught me many good things. Yes, that's very beautiful. But the Alter Rebbe, Balatanya, when he got married, his in-laws had a little money, relatively. They told him, if you stay here and live with us in the same town, we'll support you. And we won't bother you. Learn Torah and build whatever you want. Remember, there was no wiring money then. It was either they were there or you're not there. Alter Rebbe looked at his in-laws and he said to them, very nice offer. There's something even more comfortable. To live b'mei imay, to go back b'mei imay in your mother's womb for 9 months is the most beautiful place. You don't have to worry about anything. Health issues, food, drink, oxygen, nothing. It's extremely comfortable. And that ain't two problems. The space has gotten too small and the child has gotten too large. The way the Eibishter made the world is, yes, the first 20 years, or 50, whatever the amount of years, we're nurtured by our parents. But then comes next step. Now that you have the keiches, lech lechem artzecha is not a chas v'shalom negative, it's a positive. It's the positive. The positive of what? Being able to free ourselves from the comfort zone. So, Yiddishkeit and Torah. You look at Seif Perek Ches and Hilchos Malachim, something most people don't understand. The Rambam paskins that just like it's a mitzvah to do Taryag mitzvah, it's also a mitzvah to mashpia and umas elam, that they should be Mekayim Sheva mitzvahs. The Rebbe in the classic talks in the 80s explained, so why didn't anyone ever do it? Because we couldn't do it. We were living, protecting ourselves, and halavai they wouldn't touch us if we did nothing. To go ahead and start preaching to the non-Jewish world. But what happened by Matan Torah? Affected only Har Sinai. It says the whole world changed. Tzipre tzif tzif. Everyone sensed something's happening. They came running to Bilam and he said, Hashem meiz la'amayit and Hashem yivorech asam evashalom. You ever envision Mashiach and Geula? You didn't think that's going to come up, right? What's the world of Mashiach and Geula? So most Eden think that the few Frume Eden are going to have their Kelim, and we're going to have our Gan Eden on earth, and the rest of the people, I don't want to say what many people think. Says the Rambam, he quotes a Yeshaya that we say in Haftarah every year, Achar Pesach. Mola ha'aretz deis Hashem kamayim layam mechas. Ha'aretz. So lest you think ha'aretz means only for Eden, so the Rambam makes it clear, Lo yi'esa kol ha'elam el ledasas Hashem bolvad. The entire business of the world, and then he says, on Eden, Yisrael will be learning more and gives a description. This is not a chiddush from the Rambam. It's all the psukim. That the world will be transformed, not just one little part of the world. Now, this is really forward thinking, and that's why I conclude with that, because real Yiddishkeit is not just to conquer our small communities and ourselves. It's to conquer the world. Kavshua, Pru'uravu, Vikivshua. The entire world. Molards Vikivshua. Now, what is conquer? Not chas v'shalom with bloodshed, not with wars, not with weapons. It's with Deis Hashem. So, here in Yud Shevat, Shivim Shana from the Rebbe, assumed leadership. These are some of the points. There are obviously many more, much can be elaborated upon. But I believe that each of us, we take to heart any of these nekudas that were mentioned here, including the ones my brother mentioned and will mention. I think it could actually radically shift the way we think. And not chas v'sholem undermine anything that you believe till now or the way you live till now. It's only to add and increase and to add a dimension to the depth of Yiddishkeit. Because at the end of the day, it's a journey. We go deeper and deeper. And each aspect can help us grow personally in our family lives, in our communal lives, and ultimately the global world, that through our actions, as the Rambam Paskins, my brother talked about the power of a yochid, that le'elam, a person should see himself, that the kol ha'elam shakol, the good and the negative, and one act, one word, one thought can tip the scale and maybe tshuva atzola, bring personal and global redemption, which we've all been praying for, and we say in 6 or 7 of the Shemin Esrei every day. Parnosa and Refuah is one bracha. Gula is 6 or 7 brachas. So the Eibishter should bless us all that we should do our part. And the Gula Prat is that we are, especially in a Yem's Gula like this, and as the Moira Naim writes, that every one of us has a nitzutz of Mashiach within us, a spark of Mashiach, and when they all collectively join, we'll be zeichet to Geil Rishon, Geil Achron, to the Gula Hamitis Vashlema.
Amen.
L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim.
Chaim, Chaim, Chaim.